Tov, everybody. I'm recording the Daf Yomi. I'm going to change my name. I'm recording Daf Yomi for Motzaei Shabbat, Parshat Bechukotai. This is Daf Sadi Dalid in Masechet Bava Metzia, 94. And this is Shabbos's Daf. I'm going to start from the Mishnah. So let's begin from the Mishnah on Daf Sadi Dalid. Amud Aleph. The Mishnah is 4 lines from the top. Says the Mishnah, right? We've been discussing in the previous Mishnah that we had yesterday the status of a Shomer Sachar and the Shomer Chinam and all the responsibilities of the different Shomrim. Says the Mishnah, if you make a condition when you become a Shomer, you agree to be a Shomer, but you change the criteria. So the Torah says that a Shomer Chinam is patur from Gneva v'Aveda, patur from Ones, but chayev for Peshia, but you have to swear. Let's say, says the Mishnah, matneh shomer chinam. A shomer chinam can make a t'nai, they can make a condition. I'm willing to watch your object for you on condition liot patur mishvuah. That, usually if it's stolen, if I say it's stolen, I have to swear that it's stolen. I don't want to swear. So you either trust me or you don't trust me. If you want me to watch it for you, I will watch it, but I will not make a shvuah. That's okay. You can do that. And a shoel liot patur min shalim. A shoel who has to pay for everything can say, I want to borrow your thing, but only on condition I don't have to pay if it gets lost, in which case you're patur. Or nosei sachar vasocher, remember the middle cases of one who is a shomer sachar and a person who rents, they are paturim mishvuah u'min shalem. They can be patur from mishvuah if they say it's ones, or from paying if it's stolen. You can make any condition you want. That's the first part of the Mishnah. Continues the Mishnah with what seems to be a contradiction. It says the Mishnah, B'kol ha'matneh ma shekatuv b'Torah t'no batel. You make a condition against what the Torah says. The Torah says a shomer has to do this thing or a person has to do this thing, and you make a condition against it, your condition is invalid, which again, it contradicts what we just said, that a shomer can make any kind of condition. But the Gemara, of course, will discuss that. And continues the Mishnah furthermore, when you do the act first, then you make the condition, you say, I will give this to you on condition, then t'na'o batel. Then the act came first, the condition does not apply, and you therefore have to give over the thing even without the condition. And v'chol she'ef shelo l'kaimo b'sofo, but anything in which you can fulfill it, meaning it's in your hands to fulfill this thing. So you make a t'nai, we'll see in the Gemara more about this, you make a t'nai that is fulfillable, and hitzneh imo mitchilato, and you make a t'nai before you did the act, before you made the original deal, then in those cases, t'na'o kayam, that is how you make a proper t'nai. Says the Gemara, Amai. Now, why in the world can a shomer say, I'll watch your thing on condition that you don't make me swear, you don't make me pay, I don't have to do what the Torah says I have to do? Isn't that matneh mashkatu b'Torah? That is making a condition against what is about something that's written in the Torah. The Mishnah continues, but we all have the assumption that if you go against the Torah, your Tanai is batel. Answers the Gemara, Hamani Rabbi Yehudi. In fact, it's a machloket Tanaim. And the Tana of the first part of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar, if it's a davar shebimamon t'na'o kayam. If you make a condition in a monetary things are not halachic in the same way. It's just common agreement. If people agree about something, they agree about something. You can make any condition you want about money, even against what the Torah says. The Torah normally says that if you steal, you have to pay this, and if you are shomer, you pay this. If you make a condition that's monetary, applies even according to Rabbi, even against the Torah. The Amar, the davar shebimamon t'na'o kayam, the Tanya. Now we have a Braita where Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is stated explicitly, and we'll see Rabbi Meir's opinion who disagrees. Says the Braita, Homer li isha, a man says to a woman, Harei at mekudeshes, I want to marry you, and I'm going to marry you on one condition. Almanat she'in lecha lech alai she'er ksut v'ona. Torah says that a husband has to provide for his wife she'er, ksut, and ona. Right now, we're going to discuss these, but she'er, if you recall, ksut and ona, 2 of those are monetary, right, and 1 of those is physical. Right, so the she'er means food that you provide. Ksut is, of course, clothing, and ona is sleeping together. So those are 3 responsibilities that a husband has to his wife. And he says, I'll marry you, but I don't want to do it. And if you don't want to get married, that's fine. But if you want to marry me, that's the condition. So that is being a t'nai against what's written in the Torah. Says the Braita, Harizu Mikudeshet, they are married. and to know batel, but his conditions don't apply, and he has to provide her with all three of these things because you cannot make a condition against the Torah. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda, who's going to be our Mishnah, says if it's davar shebemamon, the financial parts of that, which is the clothing and the food, to na'o kayam, the personal parts, the halachic parts, the sleeping together, that to na'o batel. But for monetary things, your tanai is kayam. So that is the ton of our Mishnah, that since when a shomer has to pay, it's monetary, you can make a condition against the Torah. Ask Gemara, is that possible? Nimatzin lukman like Rabbi Yehuda. Can you say our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda? Look at the next words in the Mishnah. Ema Sefer. The next words in the Mishnah were, quote, Kol hamatneh mashkatuv b'Torah t'no batel. That if you make a condition against the Torah, your tanai is batel. That is atan Rabbi Meir. That is what the opinion of Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to make a condition against the Torah. Says, well, hello, Kasha. That's not necessarily a question, because the Olam Rabbi Yehuda, it could be our whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, and the first part of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda said you can make a condition about a money thing for a shomer, but then he continues with Seifa b'davar she'eino shel mamon. When the Mishnah continues and says, but if you make a condition against the Torah, it's batel. That means if it's a condition against the Torah and something that's not monetary, there to know batel, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, that's the first two parts of the Mishnah. But Ema Sefer, look at the third part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah continues and says, Kol tanai sheyesh bo maaseh b'tchilato, any condition where you first do the act and then you start making a condition about it, right? First you do the act, you give something, you say, and it's on condition, then to know batel, right? Then what you say afterwards as a condition doesn't matter. You already did the thing. Says the Marman Shamle de Itle Haisvara. Now, who is the Tana who we know holds that opinion that if you make a condition after the act, the condition doesn't apply? That's Rabbi Meir. That is Rabbi Meir. The Tanya, we have another Braita which says the following: Abba Chalafta ish Kfar Chananya amar mishum Rabbi Meir. Abba Chalafta, the Tana, said in the name, he was a man of Kfar Chananya. He said in the name of Rabbi Meir that the same thing as our Mishnah. Tanai kodem l'maaseh. If you make a condition before, of course, remember we used Bnei Gad, Bnei Ruvain. We used that earlier when we learned about this. Right? If you say, if we go to war, then we get our property, that's the right way to make it tonight. I raise it tonight. But if you say, Ma'aseh kodem l'tnai, ain't no tonight. If you say, I will give you this thing on condition that you do that, then the condition, the giving it counts, the condition doesn't. So that is Rabbi Meir. So now the third part of our mission is Rabbi Meir. So it doesn't make any sense. And again, our Tana did not say, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Divrei Rabbi Meir. It said Stam. If it's Stam, it implies it's all one person. So now you're saying the first part of the Mishnah can only work according to Rabbi Yehuda, and the third part of the Mishnah has to be Rabbi Meir. Ella says, Gemara, you're right. Let's start all over. Kula, Rabbi Meir, the whole Mishnah, which is usually the way it's done, Mishnah, is Rabbi Meir. So now we're back to our original question. Why is it that a shomer can make a condition against what's written in the Torah? According to Rabbi Meir, if you're matneh, amasha katuv b'Torah, your tanai is batel. So if the shomer, the Torah says you have to pay if you're a shomer sachar for stealing, right? For something that gets stolen, sorry. Then, but you made a condition, I will pay you to watch it, and I'll hold you blameless if it gets stolen. How can you make that condition? Says the Gemara, you can. You know why? Because even though you can't be matneh mash katuv b'Torah, shani hacha, this is not the same as that. Because you never took responsibility, meaning it's not like you were a shomer and you wanted to change the rules of a shomer. You were never a shomer. You said, I am not a shomer sachar. I am a new thing that we will define. But you never, because you never started the process, basically, you essentially can make any tanai you want because you agreed to be something that is not a shomer sachar. You can't change the rules of shomer sachar, but you can make a condition before you even start to be something different. So that is the explanation for why our Mishnah is not considered to be matneh al masha katuv b'Torah. Tana. Now there's a Braita that says the following. Umatnen, so similar to our Mishnah, right? Umatnen shomer sachar liot kishoel. Right? You go and hire someone to be a shomer sachar. You're paying $10 to watch your pet chicken, right? But you usually remember a shomer sachar is chayav for geneva and aveda, but patur for ones. But you say to this person, you know what? Let's make a condition. I'll pay you $10 to watch this, but I want you to be chayav if there's an ones. If there's a freak thunderstorm and it drowns, you have to pay. So you can do that, says the Braita. Matneh shomer sachar liot kishoel. Shomer sachar can make a condition to take responsibility like a shoel. What do you mean? First of all, b'mai, right? How in the world do you accept that responsibility? How do you become responsible? Is it b'dvarim? Question mark. Amar Shmuel, no. It can't be with words. You can't get a financial responsibility by just saying something. It must be b'shikanu miyado. It's where you made a kinyan. You verified this act. You're a shomer, and this is a kinyan that shows that you're doing it at being treated like a shoel. Rabbi Yochanan says, no. It doesn't have to be that way. It is afilotema b'shikanu miyado. You don't have to make a kinyan separately. Why? Because in fact, you're essentially getting monetary benefit from agreeing to be a shomer sachar who's treated like a shoel. Why? Because bahahi hana'at the kanafik lekala the inish mehemnahu, right? The benefit that you get, the societal benefit from people saying, "Oh, this guy does a really good job watching. He's so secure in his watching that he's going to accept responsibility like even a shoel." Right. So now all of a sudden you're going to start getting a lot of business. Everyone's going to hire you to watch their thing, and not just necessarily business, but you get a good reputation. So that hana'ah, because you're essentially getting paid, not physically paid, but you're getting paid in the big scheme, gamar u'mishabei nafshe, you accept and you take full responsibility like a shoel. Okay, so that would be possible in that case. It's not matna mashakatu b'Torah, because as we just explained, you're making baseline conditions that are different than what the Torah is, and you're not a shomer sachar, you're not a shoel, you're a new entity. Now, continue our Mishnah. The last case in our Mishnah was kol two dots, kol she'afshar lo l'kaimo b'sofo, anything that you can keep in the end, meaning your condition has to be something that's doable. If you make a condition that's nonsensical, if you say, I will marry you on condition that I can jump over the 50-foot highway, then that's not doable, and therefore it has no effect as a tonight. Says Rav Tavla, Amarav, Zu Divrei Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. That opinion that I just articulated, that the Tanai has to be reasonable for it to be chal, is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, who holds that. No. Even a Tanai that you cannot fulfill, it's impossible. It's me going to the moon, or I guess that's not impossible anymore, but going to the sun. The hitna alav mitchilato, and you make a t'nai in the beginning, the t'nai is kayam. It doesn't matter. So then the thing will never happen. If you say, I'll give you, I'll sell you my house if I can jump 100 feet, then the house is never sold, because since you can't do the t'nai, there's nothing ischal, the Tanya. And that is based on a braita that we had in Gittin. What does the braita say? Hareza gitech, a person says to a woman, here is your get. I'm giving you a get to get divorced. But I'm not giving it to you. You don't hand it up front. Remember, you have to make it conditional right away. But a condition that I climb up to the skies. And again, this was in the time before they had SpaceX rockets. So I will go up to the sky, which is impossible. Or I'll go down to the deepest of the oceans, which again was physically impossible. Or minat shetivlai kana shomea ama, or a condition that I swallow, right, a reed that is 100 amot long, which is not possible. Or on condition that you, I guess this is all conditions for you, right? Conditions that you cross over the Yam HaGadol on your feet, that you walk on the water. Impossible. In all these cases, says the Braita, then it's not a get. Because if nitkayim atnai, if she can fulfill the tanai, which is impossible, then it would be harez a get. But if she can't, nitkayim atnai, no get. Right? That's the opinion of the Chachamim. But Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema Omer, who's the Tan of our Mishnah, hizet get. Know that if you say it this way, it is a get, because the condition is not chal. Clearly, you were joking. No one thought that she was going to walk on water. And therefore, when you said it's a get, you meant to give it without a condition. Anything that's impossible for you to do, even if you're hitznei and you make it a condition, it's as if you are mafliga. Mafliga literally means exaggerating, right? And it is kasher, meaning the kasher, it's chal without the condition. So whatever you said, the get or the kedushin or whatever, would be effective. Amr Nachman Amar Rav halachak Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. In fact, that's the opinion. That's the halacha of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, that a condition has to be reasonable for it to be chal. Amr Nachman Bar Yitzchak matnita namideka. That seems to be our Mishnah. Diktani, Tosas is bothered because it's not just deka. It's not like it's an implication of our Mishnah. It is our Mishnah. But I'm going to leave that. Said Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak matnita namideka. Diktani kol she'efshar lo l'kaimo b'sofo v'hitnei mitchilato t'nao kayam. Anytime where you said I can fulfill it, and you make it tonight, it matters. But hayev shalakaimo, it's no batel. But since it's impossible to keep it, it would not be a t'nai. Shema mina, you see that our Mishnah goes, our Stam Mishnah goes like Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, and that is how we paskin. Hadron alach hasocher et hapoalim. Let's continue now. Hope I'm not going too quickly. I hope clearly enough. We're continuing now on the bottom of Daf Tzadi Daled Amud Aleph at a new parak. Has shoel et hapara. Let's say a person borrows a cow. Now, we've learned already the rules that if you borrow a cow, you're a shoel, and you're chayiv in ones, and you're chayiv in geneva and aveda. But remember that we alluded to a couple times already something in the pasuk, because the pasuk says, and I'm going to read the pasuk now because I have Rose's fancy Gemara, which says in Shemot Chaf Bet Yudalin, Im ba'alav imo, that if you borrow something and the owners are with you, lo yishalem, you don't pay, right? Im shavorhu. Right, im sachiru b'mischaro. So you don't pay. So says the Mishnah, if you borrow a cow and you also sha'al ba'aleh ima, you borrow the services of the owner to come with it, then, or you rent them, o sachar ba'aleh ima, you might pay the guy, right? You're like, can I borrow your lawnmower and can I pay you to operate it? Or sha'al haba'alim oscharam, you hire or you borrow, meaning you're paying or not paying the owners to come work for you, and then sha'al tapara, and then you borrow the cow. So meaning first you employed the owner, and then or borrowed the owner, and then you borrowed the cow. In those cases, umeitav, the cow dies, you're patur. Even though a shoel usually has to pay for onus, you don't have to pay. Why? Shneimar, as the pasuk I just quoted, in ba'alav imo lo yishalim. If the owners are with you, you don't have to pay, and that's the rule of ba'alim imo. Continues the Gemara on Daf Sadi Daled Amud Bet, top of the page. Aval sha'al tapara. But if you do the other order, if you borrow someone's cow to work on your field, and then you go home at lunch and you say, can I borrow you to help me work it, or I'll pay you. Achar kach sha'al tabalim. You either borrow the owner of scharan or you rent him. Umeita, and then the animal dies, you're chayav. Why? Shenemar, because it says ba'alav ein imo. If the owners are not with you at the time that you borrow it, then even though they're with you later, shalem yishalem, you have to pay. And so that is the halacha of the Mishnah. Now says the Gemara, Mitiktani Seifa, from the fact that the Seifa said, Va'achar kach sha'al tapara, right, that first you borrowed or rented the owner, then you borrowed the cow, Michlal Duresha Diktani Ima, in the beginning of the first part of the Mishnah, right, the Mishnah basically had three cases. You borrowed the owner and the cow at the same time. You borrowed the owner first, and then the cow. In those cases, you're patur because the owner's with you. The third case is you borrowed the cow first and then the owner. Now, what's the first case though? But since the second case, Miktani Seifa, that after the beginning, when you borrowed the owner, you asked the owner to work for you, you borrowed the cow. Mechlal de Reisha, which says you did it together, Diktani Ima is Ima Mamash. It means you borrowed the owner and the cow at the same time. Now, the problem is that logistically, how can you do that, right? Because how do you acquire a cow? By moving it, by pulling it. How do you acquire a human, right? You acquire a human by making an agreement. If a person agrees to work for you, then they're responsible, right? Because they're human, they have dot. An animal, you can't talk to the animal, you can't do it, you have to actually make an action. So how can you have imam mamash? How can you have the owner and the animal come into your possession at the exact same time? The way you get a cow, the way you acquire responsibility for a cow is by pulling it. Just by saying it. He says, well, that's not such a big problem. What do you mean? It could be, it could be that he said, look, I want to borrow your services. I don't need you right now. In an hour, I'm going to your house and I'm going to borrow your cow, which you agreed to lend me. When I pull your cow, I want to consummate you work for me. So you just made a condition, right? That's one answer. Did I skip one? I did. I skipped the first one. Sorry. The first answer is Kigon Tikaima para b'chatzero de shoel. The borrower, let's say the lender, which is the owner, and his cow are in the chatzer of the borrower. So at the moment that the owner says, you can borrow my cow, you don't need a meshicha to borrow it, because since it's in the chatzer of the borrower, it's already acquired by that person. The lo mechasra meshicha, you're not missing pulling it, because you don't need to pull it. So that's one answer. By the one I read already is the Amrlei, where he made a condition, which is unusual, but he said, At gufeich lo tishal, I don't want to borrow your services until the moment that I move your cow and acquire your cow. Adshat meshichat paratcha. So in both of those cases, the responsibility of the owner to work for you, the responsibility of the cow to work for you happen at the same time. And so that is the explanation of our Mishnah. Now says the Gemara, this is fascinating. Sanan Hata, right? Tosfos comments over here that it's very strange, right? Because this is a Mishnah that we had in yesterday's daf, on Friday's daf. And it's weird that we didn't discuss it there. And all of a sudden now we quote the Mishnah, and we're going to analyze this entire Mishnah. But the Mishnah we had yesterday was Arba'a Shomim, right? The quintessential Mishnah about Shomim that stated there are 4 Shomim. And they are Shomer Chinam, which is the extreme of borrowing with no responsibility, of watching with no responsibility, no payment. Shoel, one who borrows, who has full responsibility. Nosei Sachar and a Socher, who are the middle group, where they have responsibility for Gneva, Vaveda, but not for onus, right? So that's the 4 cases. Says the Mishnah, Shomer Chinam Nishba Alakol. Shomer Chinam is potter. They swear whether it was stolen or lost or onus. They just have to say what happened. They have to prove what happened by swearing, and then they don't have to pay. Shoel, Mishalim Itakol. He's got to pay for everything. Well, again, not necessarily everything, but almost everything. If it's an ones or Gneva Vaveda, Shoel has to pay. Nosei Sachar Vasocher, they are in the middle. If it's Shvuya Nishbaim, they can swear to become Patur that it was Shvura, that it broke, in an unexplained way, or it was Shvuya, was captured in war, let's say, Amita, or dropped dead. So in those cases, which are all called ones, he can swear that that's what happened, and he's patur. Umishalmim, but they have to shomer sachar and the socher have to pay if it's lost or it's stolen. So if it's an ones, if it gets captured by bandits, if it drops dead, you're patur. And you have to swear, but you're patur, you're shomer sachar. And if it just is stolen or lost, which is somewhat your liability, then you're chayiv. That's the Mishnah. Says the Gemara today. I don't know how many lines we are. Maybe 15 lines from the top. Minahani mili. What is the source for these halachot? Now, if you recall, in Parshat Mishpatim, there are 3 separate sections where it talks about responsibilities of a borrower or a watchman, right? And the psukim that I'm going to read quickly, actually, the Gemara is going to talk about it a lot today, but it says, Chi yishal ish me'imre'eo, person borrows from somebody else, v'nishbar omeit, and the animal breaks or dies. If ba'alav einimo, then shalem yishalem. So that's one pasuk. That's the pasuk of Shoel. If you recall, there's also a pasuk that we're going to learn. We're actually going to discuss this as we go on about shomer sachar and a pasuk about shomer chinam. Right. So those are 3 basic categories. We had a machloked earlier whether a socher, where they fit into that. Clearly, our Mishnah is of the opinion that a socher is like a shomer sachar. Now, it says in Marminani Mili, the Tanu Rabbanan. Let's quote the Braita, which derives these halachot, and it says Parsha Rishona. The first parsha in Mishpatim that talks about Shomim, that is Nemra B'Shomer Chinam. The first parsha, which we're going to get into, which talks about being patur if it dies, and if it's stolen, and you have to swear, is a Shomer Chinam. Shniya, the second parsha, which follows right after that, in Chafbet in Mishpatim, is B'Shomer Sachar. It's talking about Shomer Sachar. Remember, Shomer Sachar has to swear if it's an onus, but he has to pay if it's Gneva Vaveda. Shlishit, the third parsha, which follows right after that, is Bishoel. It's talking about someone who borrowed. Okay. Now it says, well, I don't understand how you know that. Bishlama Shlishit, the third parsha, is clearly talking about a Shoel Mifurash, right? Because it says, now we quote, V'chi Yishal Ishmei Imre'eo, if a person borrows. So clearly, the third parsha is referring to a Shoel, V'nishmar Omeit, Ba'alav Imo, Shalem Yishalem. Ella Rishona b'Shomer Chinam and Shniya b'Shomer Sachar. How do you know that the first parsha, which says that if you're watching something and it is stolen or lost, we learned this, we derived this earlier, you go and make a shvua and you're patur. That's a Shomer Chinam. And the second parsha, which says if it's stolen or lost, you got to pay, that's a Shomer Sachar. How do you know that? Maybe it's the opposite. Okay, I mean, how do you know Epach? Maybe Epachana. Right? Maybe you can switch it up and say the first parsha is saying that if you're a shomer sachar, you're patur, and if you're shomer chinam, you're chayav. Now, of course, that's not very logical, right? Mistavra, it seems pretty logical that a shniya b'shomer sachar, that the second parsha should be referring to a shomer who you pay, because in the second parsha it says that you're chayav b'gneva v'aveda. You have to reimburse the owner if it gets lost or stolen, and it makes sense that if you're being paid to watch it, you have more responsibility. This is where it's true that the second parsha says that if you have it's lost or stolen, you have to pay. But remember that in the first parsha, if you say it's stolen, then you don't have to pay. You have to swear. let's say you swear that it was stolen, and then it turns out that you were lying, right? And they find it in your basement. Remember, in that case, you are what's called to'en ta'anat ganav. You claim that it was stolen, you swore falsely, you then have to pay kefil. So it turns out that although in the first case you don't have to pay for lost or stolen, you do have the possibility of paying double, which you never have in the second case. So maybe, Adarabba, maybe you should say that Rishonah is referring to Shomer Sachar, because the Rishonah, the first parsha, where it does say you're patur for Gneva Vaveda, but you could pay double. You'd have to pay double if it was Toin Tanat Ganav. If you claimed that it was stolen, you swore falsely and you were lying. So maybe there actually is a stringency of the first parsha because sometimes you pay more. Says it's true that sometimes you pay more, but most of the time you pay less, right? Afilo hachi karna below shvua, to say in the second parsha that you always pay the principal if it was lost or stolen. That is stricter adifa mikfela b'shvua than saying if you swear and you're found to be false, you pay double. And so the more strict thing is for a person to say you always pay the principal, and that's the second parsha, and that's what's referring to Shomer Sachar. Teidan, I could prove that to you. The Shoel, think about a Shoel, right? Shoel gets kol hana'ah shelo. Shoel gets all pleasure, right? A Shoel does nothing. They don't have to work for it. You lend them your animal. They just get to enjoy the fruit of the labor, and Einam Shalim Elokeren. They only pay, right? What does a Shoel pay? If the animal's lost or stolen or an ones, right? The Shoel pays the principal. So you see that even though a person who has a lot of benefit only pays the principal, and therefore the second parsha, which talks about paying the principal, is referring to a Shomer Sachar. It says the Gemara, just while we're on the topic, right? We're at the second of the wide lines. Is it true about a Shoel that you can properly describe a Shoel as being someone who has, quote, kol hana'ah shelo, that it's just a picnic, right? All the benefit goes to him. You borrow an animal, but you have to feed the animal. It's not going to feed itself. Habayi mizone, right? I can borrow your car, but I still got to pay the taxes and the tolls, right? Not taxes, the gas and the tolls, right? So the animal, you still have to feed it. Well, you only have to feed it if you're in a place where there's no food. Let's say you're kaimeh ba'agam. Let's say you're working or you're using it in a marsh where there's tons of food available. It says, well, okay, but you still have to watch it, abay netir, so it doesn't run away. Okay, but maybe that's your job. Maybe the natar mata, right? Natar mata. You are a city watchman, so you're very good at watching things. It's no extra work for you. Or you're right. We exaggerated, right? Lo tema, don't say kol hana'ah shelo, that all the benefit goes to a borrower. Ema rov hana'ah shelo, that most a borrower does very little. They mostly get a free ride. And so maybe not completely free, but mostly free. It could also be, we're talking about Shelat Kelim. If I borrow your hammer from you, I don't have to feed the hammer, right? I don't have to watch the hammer too much either. And so basically I just get pure gain from your object. And the point we had before was still, even though that's the case, you only have to pay the principal because that's considered to be the strict thing, more so than saying you sometimes have to pay double. Now continued the Braita, the Mishnah, sorry, and said, Nosei sachar v'hasocher, if you are being paid or you rent something, then you have to be nishma'in for an ones. If it's shvura, which means it was broken, right? It was injured. Ala shvuya, it was captured by bandits. Ala meita, it was killed. It died, sorry, it wasn't killed, it dropped dead. In all of those cases, you swear and say that's what happened. You don't have to pay. But you do have to pay if it was lost or stolen. So that's the halacha. Now, how do we know that? Bishlam Geneva. So let's go one step at a time. Geneva, you're a shomer sachar. You come in and say at the end of 30 days, your diamond ring was stolen. So there you have to pay. Because the Torah says, this is the middle parsha, Im ganov yiganev mi imo. If it's stolen from you, shalim yishalim. Yishalim the ba'alav. You got to pay the owner. So that we know. Ela aveda minal. And how do you know that if it's lost, you have to pay? Torah doesn't say if it's lost, you have to pay. The Tanya, we got a Braita. And the Braita says the following. It says in the Pasuk, Im ganov yiganev. If it's stolen, you got to pay. Says the Braita, in the Ela ganeva. So I only know that a shomer sachar is to pay if it's stolen. How do I know that a shomer sachar is to pay if it's lost? Aveda minayin. Talmud lomar, therefore the Torah says the double language. Im ganov yiganev. It doesn't say im ganav. It says if it was stolen, and of course doubling it is mikom makom to tell you in any way that it's lost, including if it's not stolen by a person, but lost in regular aveda. right? Says Gemara, well, I understand that Ganovi Ganev sounds unusual, but sometimes the Torah just speaks unusually, and that's called Dibra Torah Kelashon B'nei Adam. Torah speaks the way people speak, which is that you exaggerate, you emphasize points. So this makes sense if you're of the opinion that Lo Amin Dibra Torah Kelashon B'nei Adam. You can't use that. You can't say don't darshan the double words in the Torah because that's just the way people speak. Ella, so therefore, it makes sense. This is an extra word, im ganov ganev, and you can darshan aveda. Elamanda amar, but according to the Tanu who holds that Amrina Dibra Torah Klashon Bnei Adam, that you do say sometimes. The Torah just repeats things because that's how people speak. So then it's not extra. Ganov ganev is not extra. So Michael and so how do you know that a shomer sachar is chayav for aveda? Amri b'marava. So they explained in Eretz Yisrael that in fact it is a kal v'chomer. You have a kal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer? Ma gneva. Think about it. When you have lost and stolen is hard, right? If you just lose something, you were just negligent. If it was stolen, you were a little negligent, but someone else came around and took it from you. So it required a second party, right? Ma gneva, which is krovala onis. It's actually more like, right? There's three categories, right? There's pshia, which is negligence. There's gneva and aveda, which is in the middle, some responsibility, and then there's onus. But if you split it up, think of Geneva as close to onus because you really, I think I said a little bit wrong, you didn't have control over these other people coming in, right? So there was things beyond your control. They came and stole, but still Mishalim. The Torah clearly says that in Ganovi Ganev you have to pay. So Aveda, now think about Aveda. You were just negligent. No one else lost it. You just put it down and walked away. So that's Krovala Pshia, that's close to being negligent. So lo kol shekain that if you're a Shomer Sachar, that you got to pay. So that's the Kal V'chomer. V'yidach. Now the other opinion, right, who says that the pasuk is from Ganovi Ganev. So why do you need a pasuk? What's wrong with the Kal V'chomer? That Tana holds. It's true. It's a great Kal V'chomer. Sometimes the Torah says something that you would have learned from a Kal V'chomer, and that principle is called Nilta Da'atya B'Kal V'chomer. Something that you can derive from a Kal V'chomer is still sometimes said in the Torah. Tarach v'katav l'kra. The Torah still goes out of its way to say it, to write it. So that's not a deal breaker, and the words Yiganovi Ganev indicate that even though we have a Kal V'chomer. Finally, I think we're up to finally for today, the Mishnah said, V'hashoel, that if you are a borrower, right, then you mishalim etakol, you pay for everything. You pay for ones, you pay for Geneva Veda, you pay for Pshia, okay? Says, one second. Bishlama, I understand Shvura Meita. Remember that there's three things that we said that are onus. There's shavor, shavoy, and mate, right? It broken, stole, captured, or died. But says the Gemara, the Torah only mentions two of those when you come to Shoel. Because Bishlama Shvura Umeita, an animal being broken or an animal dying, Dichtiv, it says, Chi Yishal Ishmi Imre'eo, and you borrow something from your friend, and nishbar omate, and it's broken or dies, you got to pay. But how do you know that you have to pay if it gets captured? If wild bandits come and steal the thing, how do you know you have to pay? Maybe that's totally out of your control. The Chitem says, well, why don't we compare it? It's similar to Shvura Meta, which are things way out of your hands. You can't prevent the animal from dying. You can't prevent robbers from taking things, people who are armed, right? It's not Nignav. Nignav would be stolen, where you maybe could prevent it, but Shvuya is where it's captured by armed bad guys. So it says, well, maybe you learn it out from Shvura Meta, but I would say that's not necessarily the case. Because Shmala Shvura Meta, Torah might say you're chayav for Shvura Meta, because those are unsa de salakadaitahu. Those are things that you actually think about, right? Anytime you borrow an animal from someone, you have to think, this animal might drop dead. It's not my animal. It might break a leg, right? You know that that's possible, and you borrow and you accept that responsibility. The Tomar b'shvuya, but no one, when they borrow a cow, thinks that there's going to be, an attack on our town and people are going to take away the cow as a shvuya. Tomar b'shvuya shekein unsa de lo salakadaitu. That's a very far-fetched onus. Some people don't think about it. So maybe, in fact, it is different. Says the Gemara, you're right. So you know how we know that a shoel is chayav for shvuya? Because look, it says nemra shvura umeita b'shoel. It says by shoel that if it's broken or dies, you have to pay. Doesn't mention shvuya. But in the middle case, which we said was shomer sachar, it actually says that you're patur for three things. It said if it's mate or nishbar or nishba, right? All three. If it dies, it breaks, it's hurt, or it gets captured, right? You're patur in the case of a shomer sachar. So nemra shvuya umeta shvura umeta b'shomer sachar. And by Shomer Sachar, Mala Alan Shvuya Imo, the Shomer Sachar, there was a third one that was captured, an animal was captured. So Afkan, by Shoel, you're also chayev with Shvuya Imo if the animal is captured. You are chayev. Says Gemara, that's not a very good limit at all. I can ask a big question on that because Mala Shomer Sachar Shkin Lifator. You're talking about different apples to oranges. The Shomer Sachar is patur for wild things. So when Torah says you're patur for broken or stolen, or broken or dead, you're also patur if it gets attacked by armed robbers, right? But by a shoel, you're chayav. So the Torah says you're chayav if it dies or is broken. But it doesn't say you're chayav for armed robbers. Maybe you're not. Maybe you have to only be chayav for things that you could have anticipated. But this is so far-fetched that you wouldn't be chayav. So Mala Shomer Sachar Shekin the Patur. By Shomer Sachar, you're talking about all three to make you Patur, but Tomer B'Shoel Shekin the Chiyuv. By Shoel, you're talking about a person being responsible. Ella says Gemara, you know how we know it's Kirabi Natan. The way we know that a Shoel is Chayav for not only Nishbar and mate, but also for Nishba, for captive, is from the following Braita, the Tanya. Rabbi Natan Omer, Rabbi Natan says, where are we? 5 lines down from the bottom. The word O, it says Nishbar, O mate, right? Mate O Nishbar, I think is the other way. It says it dies or broken. The word O is extra, and that is the Rabot Shvuya, right? Nishbar O mate is what it says. So the word O is an extra word to include a third case of captive. Says, well, why? What do you mean? Maybe it needs to have a word O to tell you if the animal gets injured or dies. So you don't think it's if it gets injured and dies. Maybe hi mi boiling the chalik. You need the O to separate between injured and death. I mean, I would have thought that when is a person patur if you're a shomer sachar adim mitavra umeta. Sorry, by a shoel. When are you chayiv by a shoel? It's only if it breaks and dies. Right? Adam mitavra umeta lo mechayiv. You won't be chayiv until it does both, until it actually gets injured and dies. Kamash Malan. So you need the word O to say if it gets injured or if it dies, you have to pay. So the word O is not extra. Says the Gemara, it's a good problem, right? So Hanicha, the Rabbi Yonatan. This makes sense. We're about to see what this is according to Rabbi Yonatan, who says that the word O is actually usually extra. El Rabbi Yoshia, according to Rabbi Yoshia, Michael and Neymar. What are we referring to? What's Rabbi Yonatan and Rabbi Yoshia? The Tanya. We have a Braita, which we've had many times before, 3 lines in the bottom. It says in the Torah, an unusual pasuk. It says, Ish asher yikalel aviv v'et imo gets killed, right? A person who curses their father and their mother. Now, it sounds like in order to be chayiv, you have to curse both. Says the Braita, Ein li ela aviv imo. So I only know if you curse both, a person curses their father and their mother. What if they curse one? Aviv below imo or imo below aviv? Minayin, how do I know that you're also chayiv for cursing your parent? Talmud Lamra, therefore it says a separate pasuk which says, this pasuk says kilel et aviv et imo. So the word yikalel, is next to aviv. There's another pasuk that says aviv imo kilel, and there the word kilel is next to imo, right? So we learn from there aviv kilel, imo kilel. The word curse is written next to father and next to mother to tell you that cursing either one would make you chayiv. Different Rabbi Yoshaya, right? Rabbi Yonatan says you don't need a pasuk for that. When the Torah says something and something else, you understand that to mean both or each one individually. The word "and" does not mean both. It could mean "and" or, unless top of Daf Tzadi Hey. There are times the Torah says don't put beged Kalayim Shatnes, together, or don't put two animals together, then it means you can't do it together. But otherwise, an and always means and or. So we are a little problematic. I'm going to do one more line, a couple more lines with top line of Tzadi Hamid Aleph. According to Rabbi Yonatan, the word O is totally extra, right? Because when you said Nishbar Umeit, I would have known, Nishbar Omeit, it could have said Nishbar Umeit, and I would have known either one. So the fact that it said O is extra to tell you also a shvuya. But Rabbi Yoshaya doesn't believe that. And he says that if you say and, it might mean and. So what's the word O is not extra. You need it to tell you don't need for the animal to die and get wounded. Says Gemara, Filatem Rabbi Yoshaya, our Mishnah could be even according to Rabbi Yoshaya, Lechalek hacha lo tzarich. You don't actually need a pasuk to tell you that it's not both injured and death. My time is svaru. It makes logical sense, right? How in the world could the Torah say that if you injure it and kill it, you have to pay, but if you just kill it, you don't have to pay? If you just injure it, you don't have to pay. There's no logic there. So mali kat the kula, mali kat the paga. What's the difference whether you kill the whole thing or you kill part of it, right? Both of them are basically killing it or damaging it, and you're chayav. And so there's no real difference between injury and death. The fact that the Torah says one or the other, the or is extra according to everybody to tell you a third case that an animal is injured, died, or captive. And in all those cases, a shoel is chayav, shomer chesachar is pater. And tomorrow, we're going to continue with the next case in a shoel. Hope to see everyone tomorrow morning. Shavua tov.